The new frontier emerged from the void sector 3 weeks after it had disappeared. Behind it came the Eternity's Edge with all 200 Velthari crew members alive and healthy. But that was not the most shocking thing about their return. The most shocking thing was what followed them out of the forbidden space. A massive construct that dwarfed both ships materialized as the gravitational distortions faded. It looked like a mechanical flower with thousands of metallic petals that reflected starlight in impossible patterns. This was one of the mobile platforms that the ancient AI had created to explore the galaxy. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship watching Federation vessels scramble to respond to their sudden appearance. 3 Keth Mori battle cruisers had been patrolling the edge of the void sector. Their energy weapons were charging, but they had not fired yet. "Captain, we are receiving multiple communications requests," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter. "Federation. Command wants an immediate explanation for our unauthorized mission. Tell them we will explain everything at Nexus Prime. Request an emergency session of the Galactic Council." Tony Williams monitored the tactical situation from his station. "The Keth Mori ships are maintaining their distance, but they have us targeted. I think our new friend is making them nervous." The ancient construct had positioned itself between the human and alien ships. It was not making any threatening moves, but its sheer size and obvious technological superiority were sending clear messages to anyone watching. Dr. Lisa Park was reviewing the data they had gathered during their time in the Architect Station. "Captain, we have enough information here to revolutionize galactic civilization. Agricultural techniques that could end hunger, medical advances that could cure genetic diseases, energy systems that produce no pollution." Sophie Chen looked up from the engineering console where she was monitoring their new equipment. "The fabrication systems are working perfectly. We can produce the new artifacts as needed. The life seeds alone could restore dozens of damaged worlds." Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on the larger implications of what they had accomplished. They were returning to a galaxy where 3 species considered themselves the masters of all others, where humanity was dismissed as primitive and unworthy of respect. That was about to change in ways that no one could have predicted. The journey to Nexus Prime took 4 days. Word of their return spread ahead of them through the Federation communication networks. By the time they arrived, the capital world was in chaos. The Galactic Council had been called into emergency session. Representatives from every member species filled the Great Chamber. But for the first time in galactic history, the 3 dominant species were not sitting in their elevated positions looking down at everyone else. They were standing on the chamber floor looking up at Jake Morrison. The ancient construct had positioned itself in orbit around Nexus Prime. Its presence could be felt by every telepathic species on the planet. Its technology was so far beyond anything the Federation possessed that it made their most advanced systems look like stone tools, and it was clearly allied with humanity. Ambassador Vorthak of the Keth Mori was the first to speak. His crystal body was flickering with colors that indicated extreme agitation. "Human Morrison, you have violated direct orders by entering the void sector. You have endangered galactic security by bringing an unknown alien presence into Federation space." Cythara of the Velthari stepped forward. Her mental voice was tight with controlled fear. "The construct in orbit possesses technology that predates our civilization. Its presence here disrupts the established order." Merchant Prince Kelnoth of the Zephcon was more direct. "What do you want?" Jake looked around the chamber at the hundreds of representatives from species across the galaxy. Some looked frightened. Others appeared curious. A few seemed hopeful for the first time in years. "We want to share what we have learned," Jake said simply. He activated a holographic projector that displayed images from the architect station. The gathered delegates watched in stunned silence as the story unfolded. The ancient testing facility. The trials that had destroyed or preserved so many species. The choice between ultimate power and wisdom. When the presentation finished, the chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions in dozens of languages. The three dominant species huddled together in urgent consultation. The ancient AI chose that moment to make its presence known. A holographic avatar materialized in the center of the chamber. It appeared as a figure made of flowing energy that constantly shifted between different forms. "Greetings to the Galactic Federation," the AI said in a voice that somehow spoke to everyone in their own language simultaneously. "I am the guardian of the architect legacy. For 50,000 years I have tested species to determine their worthiness to inherit advanced technology." The chamber fell silent. In all that time, only 2 species have passed the final trial. The first created tools of destruction and consumed themselves with power. The second created tools of healing and chose to share their knowledge with others. The AI gestured toward Jake and his crew. "Humanity has proven that power and wisdom can coexist. They have earned the right to inherit not just architect technology, but the responsibility to guide others toward the same understanding." Vorthak stepped forward aggressively. "The Keth Mori have ruled through strength for 10,000 years. We will not bow to a species that has existed in space for barely 50. "Your strength is built on domination," the AI replied calmly. "True strength protects the weak and builds up those who have fallen." Cithara's mental voice was sharp with indignation. "Velthari intellectual superiority has brought order to the galaxy. Our telepathic abilities allow us to understand others better than they understand themselves. Your understanding is based on control," the AI responded. "True understanding accepts differences and learns from them rather than eliminating them." Kelnoth spoke with the calculated tone of a master negotiator. "Zefcon economic networks maintain stability across thousands of worlds. Without our guidance, lesser species would collapse into chaos. Your stability is built on dependence," the AI said. "True stability comes from helping others become self-sufficient rather than keeping them weak." Jake stepped forward. "We are not here to replace the old hierarchy with a new one. We are here to suggest that maybe the galaxy does not need a hierarchy at all." The chamber erupted again, but Jake continued speaking over the noise. "Every species in this room has something unique to offer. The Keth Mori understand honor and duty. The Velthari possess incredible intellectual gifts. The Zefcan have created trade networks that connect the entire galaxy. Instead of arguing about who is superior, why not work together to help everyone reach their potential?" Lisa stepped up beside him, carrying one of the life seeds they had created. "We could restore the burned worlds of the Outer Rim. Give the refugee populations new homes instead of crowded camps." Sophie held up a knowledge bridge device. "We could help species share technology and culture without losing their unique identities. Cooperation instead of competition." Tony displayed images of the Peacemaker artifact. "We could resolve conflicts before they become wars, help species understand each other instead of fighting over resources." Amy activated a star chart showing the location of the architect station. "There is enough knowledge there to advance every civilization in the galaxy. Medical techniques, agricultural methods, clean energy systems, all of it freely available to anyone willing to use it responsibly." The ancient AI watched the reactions of the various delegates with what might have been satisfaction. The humans offer partnership rather than dominance. They seek to elevate others rather than diminish them. This is why they were chosen. Vorthak looked around the chamber and seemed to realize that the old order was ending whether he accepted it or not. What proof do we have that humans will not become corrupted by this power? Jake pulled out his sidearm and set it on the floor in front of the Kethmori warrior. Because we choose to trust you with our lives. Because real power comes from knowing when not to use your strength. Sithara stared at him with her large black eyes. You would make yourself vulnerable to those who might destroy you. That is what trust means, Jake replied. We believe that given the chance, most people will choose to help, rather than harm. Kelnoth calculated rapidly. The economic implications of free access to architect technology would destabilize our entire system. Then we will help you build a better system, Sophie offered. One based on abundance rather than scarcity. The debate continued for hours. Some species embraced the human proposal immediately. Others needed time to consider the implications. A few rejected the offer entirely, preferring the familiar certainties of the old hierarchy. But something fundamental had changed in that chamber. For the first time in galactic history, the three dominant species were not dictating terms to everyone else. They were being offered partnership as equals. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperation Station, orbiting the architect construct in the Void sector. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from dozens of species working together to explore the ancient. The chamber transformed around them one final time. The walls became transparent, showing the vast structure that surrounded them and the stars beyond. In the center of the room, a pedestal rose from the floor. On it sat three objects that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The ancient voice spoke with what sounded like reverence. Final trial. Before you lie the tools of ultimate power, technology that could make your species the masters of this galaxy. Jake Morrison approached the pedestal slowly. The first object looked like a crystal that contained a miniature star. Energy swirled within it in patterns that hurt to watch directly. The Stellar Forge, the voice explained. With this device, you can create or destroy entire star systems. No fleet could stand against you. No world could resist your will. The second object was a sphere of metal that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Jake could perceive. It flickered, in and out of visibility, as if it was not quite real. The reality anchor. With this tool, you can rewrite the laws of physics themselves. Change the fundamental forces that govern the universe. Make impossible things real and real things impossible. The third object was the strangest of all. It looked like a simple ring made of some dark material, but Jake could sense that it was far more than it appeared. The Mind Bridge. With this artifact, you can connect every intelligent being in the galaxy into a single consciousness. No more war. No more misunderstanding. Perfect unity under your guidance. Dr. Lisa Park was scanning the objects with her instruments, but the readings made no sense. Captain, these devices are generating energy levels that should not be possible. The technology involved is thousands of years beyond anything we understand. Sophie Chen circled the pedestal, studying the artifacts. From every angle. They are beautiful and terrifying. I can see how they work, but I cannot understand why anyone would build such things. Tony Williams kept his hand near his weapon, even though he knew it would be useless here. Power like this would corrupt anyone who used it. How do you control something that can rewrite reality? Amy Carter looked at the stars visible through the transparent walls. Think of what we could do with technology like this. We could protect Earth, make sure humanity never has to fear any other species again. The ancient voice seemed to approve of her words. Yes, take what you need. Use these tools to claim your rightful place among the stars. Show the galaxy what human power truly means. Jake reached toward the stellar forge, but stopped before his fingers touched the crystal. Something about this felt wrong. The test so far had been about wisdom and flexibility, about finding solutions that helped everyone, instead of just choosing sides. Tell me about the species that built this place, he said. There was a long pause before the voice answered. They were called the architects. They possessed technology beyond any other species. They could reshape entire sectors of space according to their will. What happened to them? They destroyed themselves. In the end, their power became their weakness. They could not resist using what they had created. Lisa looked up from her instruments. Captain, I am detecting something else. The energy signatures from these artifacts. They are not just powerful. They are addictive. What do you mean? Jake asked. The quantum fields they generate affect neural activity. Using them would create a psychological dependency. The more power you wielded, the more you would need to wield. Sophie was examining the base of the pedestal now. There are other artifacts here, hundreds of them, all designed to grant different types of power. This is not just a test. It is a trap. Tony understood first. The architects did not just build these devices. They were consumed by them. That is how they destroyed themselves. Amy took a step back from the pedestal. So every species that passes the test gets the same choice. Take the power and eventually destroy themselves or leave it behind. But that is not really a choice at all, Jake said. Either way, the technology stays here unused. Either way, no one benefits from what the architects learned. The ancient voice sounded confused. You speak as if there is another option. Jake looked at his crew. They had spent months proving that human technology might be primitive, but it was also practical. Human solutions might be crude, but they worked. Human thinking might be chaotic, but it led to innovations that rigid logic could never achieve. There is always another option. We just have to be willing to look for it. He turned away from the pedestal and began examining the chamber itself. Lisa joined him, running detailed scans of the walls and systems. Sophie crawled under the control interfaces looking for access panels. Tony and Amy searched for any other controls or mechanisms they might have missed. Captain, Lisa called out. I found something. The chamber is not just a testing room, it is also a manufacturing facility. The architects built these devices here. Sophie emerged from behind a control panel covered in dust but grinning. The fabrication systems are still active. We could build new devices. Different devices. Jake felt excitement building. What if we do not take their power? What if we make our own? The manufacturing systems are incredibly advanced, Lisa said, but the control interface is designed for the architects. We would need to completely reprogram everything. Tony was already working on one of the control stations. Good thing. Humans are experts at making alien technology do things it was never designed to do. Amy pulled up holographic displays showing the internal structure of the chamber. If we can figure out how these systems work, we could create devices that help instead of control. Tools that build instead of destroy. The ancient voice sounded alarmed now. This is not how the test works. You must choose. Take the power or leave it behind. We choose neither, Jake replied. We make something better. Working together, the crew of the New Frontier began the most ambitious engineering project in human history. They studied the architect technology not to copy it, but to understand it. They learned how the fabrication systems worked and then redesigned them completely. It took 18 hours of continuous work. Sophie rewired control systems that had not been modified in 50,000 years. Lisa decoded quantum programming languages that predated human civilization. Tony and Amy mapped out new device specifications that focused on cooperation instead of domination. Jake coordinated their efforts while keeping one eye on the ancient AI that controlled the station. He could sense its growing confusion as the humans refused to follow any of the established patterns. Finally, they were ready. The fabrication systems hummed to life and began creating something that had never existed before. Instead of weapons that could destroy stars, they built tools that could heal damaged worlds. Instead of devices that could rewrite reality, they created instruments that could help species understand each other better. Instead of technology that forced unity, they designed systems that celebrated diversity. When they were finished, 3 new artifacts sat on the pedestal alongside the originals. They looked simpler than the architect devices, but Jake could sense they were just as powerful in their own way. "The Life Seed," Lisa announced. "It can restore ecosystems that have been damaged by war or pollution. Instead of destroying worlds, it helps them flourish." "The Knowledge Bridge," Sophie added. "It allows different species to share information and ideas without forcing them to think the same way, understanding without loss of identity." "The Peacemaker," Tony concluded. "It helps resolve conflicts by showing all sides the consequences of their actions. Not control, but wisdom." The ancient voice was silent for a long time. When it finally spoke, it sounded different, less tired, more hopeful. In 50,000 years of testing, this outcome was never predicted. You have created power that empowers others instead of just yourselves. Jake picked up the life seed. It felt warm in his hands, and he could sense the potential within it. The power to heal entire worlds. But unlike the architect devices, it did not whisper promises of domination. Instead, it seemed to ask what good could be accomplished. "The test is complete," the voice announced. "The Eternity's Edge and its crew will be released, but more than that. You have shown that power can exist without corruption. That strength can build instead of destroy." The chamber began to change again. But this time it was not preparing another test. It was opening pathways to the rest of the station, inviting the humans to explore, to learn, to take what knowledge they needed to help their species and others grow. "The architects left more than just weapons," the voice explained. "They left libraries of knowledge, star maps showing safe passages through dangerous regions, agricultural techniques that could feed entire civilizations, medical advances that could cure diseases, all of it yours to share." Jake looked at the new artifacts they had created and then at his crew. They had passed the test not by taking power for themselves, but by creating power that could be shared. They had proven that humanity understood what the greatest species in the galaxy had forgotten. True power was not about what you could take or destroy. It was about what you could give and create. It was about lifting others up instead of pushing them down. The Keth Mori measured power by the size of their weapons. The Velthari measured it by the sophistication of their technology. The Zephkon measured it by the wealth they controlled. The new frontier shuddered as it crossed into the void sector. Jake Morrison gripped his command chair as gravitational waves washed over the ship. Around him, his crew worked frantically to keep their systems online, while space itself seemed to twist and bend around them. "Navigation is down," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from the helm. The gravitational distortions are scrambling our computers. Switch to manual control, Jake ordered. Plot our course using visual references. This was something no Federation ship could do. Alien navigation systems were too sophisticated to function without perfect computer assistance. Human ships still had manual controls because human engineers assumed that computers would eventually fail. Tony Williams monitored the sensor readings from his tactical station. Shields are holding, but they are fluctuating. Whatever is causing these gravitational effects is unlike anything in the database. Dr. Lisa Park was running continuous scans of the surrounding space. The gravitational fields are not random. There is a pattern here, but it does not match any known natural phenomenon. Sophie Chen crawled out from under an access panel where she had been rerouting power systems. Main engines are stable. The gravitational effects are actually helping us in some ways. The space-time distortions are reducing our power requirements. Jake smiled grimly. Leave it to a human engineer to find a way to turn a deadly obstacle into an advantage. How much farther to the eternity's edge? Based on the last clear sensor reading about 6 hours at current speed, Amy replied. Sir? Tony called from his station. I am picking up something on the passive sensors. There is a massive structure about 2,000 kilometers ahead. Jake looked at the main view screen but saw only the strange, swirling patterns of distorted space. Can you get a clearer reading? Switching to enhanced visual, Tony said. The view screen flickered and then showed something that made everyone, on the bridge, fall silent. Ahead of them was a structure so large it defied comprehension. It looked like a combination of a space station and a mechanical spider. Thousands of metallic arms extended in all directions from a central hub that was larger than most moons. What is that thing? Amy whispered. Lisa was frantically scanning her instruments. It is artificial. The construction material is unknown, but the energy readings are off the scale. This thing has been here for a very long time. Is it active? Jake asked. Definitely. It is generating the gravitational distortions. The entire void sector is being created by this structure. Sophie looked up from her engineering console. Captain, I am detecting the Eternity's edge. It is caught in some kind of docking mechanism on the lower section of the structure. Jake studied the image on the screen. The Velthari research ship looked tiny compared to the alien construct. It was held in place by mechanical arms that had extended from the main structure. Life signs, he asked. Faint but present. The stasis. Pods are still functioning, but they will not last much longer. Jake made a decision that would have horrified any Federation commander. Take us in closer. We need to get a better look at this thing. The new frontier approached the massive structure slowly. As they got closer, more details became visible. The surface was covered in symbols and patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. Lights pulsed along the mechanical arms in sequences that might have been some kind of communication. Captain, Lisa said in a voice filled with wonder. This structure is not just generating gravitational fields, it is scanning us. I can detect sensor beams that are more advanced than anything in Federation technology. Hostile, Tony asked, with his hand hovering over the weapon's controls. Unknown. The scans seem curious rather than aggressive. Suddenly, the communications console came alive with signals. Amy worked frantically to decode them. Captain, I am receiving a transmission. It is not using any known language, but the computer is attempting to translate. Put it through. A voice filled the bridge. It sounded ancient and tired, but unmistakably intelligent. Welcome, travelers. It has been long since visitors came to this place. Your vessel is primitive but interesting. Your species is unknown to us. Jake stood up slowly. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Frontier. We are here to rescue the crew of the ship you are holding." "Rescue," the voice repeated. "An interesting concept. The others who came here were tested and found worthy of preservation. Do you claim them? They are not ours to claim. But they are living beings who deserve to return to their families." There was a long pause. When the voice spoke again, it sounded amused. "You speak of concepts that few understand. Tell us, human Jake Morrison, why should we release those we have preserved?" Jake felt the weight of 200 lives resting on his answer. "Because keeping them against their will is wrong. Because their families are waiting for them. Because freedom is more important than preservation." "Wrong," the voice mused. "Another interesting concept. The species that built this place knew much of wrong before they ended. Very well, human Jake Morrison. We will test you as we tested them. If you prove worthy, we will release those you seek to rescue." The massive structure began to change. Sections of the hull opened to reveal chambers filled with light. The gravitational distortions around them shifted into new patterns. "What kind of test?" Jake asked. "The same test we have given to all who find this place. Can your species be trusted with power? Can you choose wisdom over strength? Can you sacrifice for others rather than take for yourselves?" Lisa looked at her instruments with growing alarm. "Captain, the structure is generating some kind of energy field. It is surrounding our ship." "We are being brought inside," Sophie reported. "Whatever this thing is, it wants us aboard." The New Frontier was drawn into one of the massive chambers. The walls closed behind them with a sound like thunder. They were now inside the alien construct with no way out except to pass whatever test awaited them. Jake looked around at his crew. Amy was young and inexperienced, but she had never backed down from a challenge. Tony was a fighter who would never surrender as long as he drew breath. Lisa was brilliant enough to solve problems that would stump entire alien research teams. Sophie could make any machine work even when it should be impossible. They were human. They were stubborn and reckless and absolutely refused to accept that. Anything was impossible. If this ancient test required strength, they would find a way to be strong. If it required intelligence, they would think their way through it. If it required sacrifice, they would give whatever was needed. The chamber around them began to change. The walls displayed images of other species that had taken this test. Some had passed and been rewarded with advanced technology. Others had failed and been destroyed. A few had been preserved like the crew of the Eternity's Edge when they were found worthy but not quite ready. "Beginning first trial," the ancient voice announced. A holographic puzzle appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a three-dimensional maze with no apparent entrance or exit. Mathematical symbols floated around it showing equations that had no solution using any known physics. "Solve the puzzle," the voice commanded. "Find the path that does not exist." Lisa immediately began analyzing the problem. Her fingers flew over her datapad as she ran calculations. "This is impossible. The mathematics literally have no solution. The maze has no entrance because it exists in dimensions that cannot intersect." Amy studied the hologram from different angles. "What if we are looking at it wrong? What if the solution is not to solve the puzzle, but to change the rules?" Sophie approached the hologram and reached out to touch it. Her hand passed through the light, but something unexpected happened. The maze responded to her presence and began to shift. "That is it," Tony said suddenly. "The test is not about following their rules. It is about making our own." Jake understood. The alien species that had built this place had been destroyed by their own rigid thinking. They had followed rules and logic until it led them to extinction. The test was to see if humanity could think beyond the boundaries that had trapped others. "We do not solve the maze," Jake announced. "We change what the maze is." He reached out and grasped the holographic puzzle. Instead of trying to find a path through it, he began to reshape it. The other members of his crew joined him. Together, they transformed the impossible maze into something new. Something that had never existed before. The puzzle collapsed and reformed as a simple doorway. "Interesting," the ancient voice said. "Most species attempt to solve the puzzle using superior technology or advanced mathematics. You chose to redefine the problem itself. Few have shown such flexibility of thought." The chamber changed again. This time it showed images of the Eternity's Edge and its crew. But it also showed something else. A primitive planet with a species that had just discovered fire. The images made it clear that saving one would doom the other. "Second trial," the voice announced. "Choose who lives and who dies. The advanced species with knowledge and history, or the primitive species with only potential." Jake felt his heart sink. This was the kind of choice that had no good answer. Save the Velthari crew, and an entire species would never have the chance to grow and develop. Save the primitive species and let 200 individuals die. 6 months had passed since the humiliating meeting on Nexus Prime. The human fleet had been scattered across the galaxy, doing exactly what the Council had assigned them to do. Mining asteroids in dangerous sectors, running cargo between safe systems, patrolling empty space where nothing ever happened. The aliens thought they had put humanity in its place. They expected humans to struggle with even these simple tasks. They were wrong. Jake Morrison stood in the cargo bay of the New Frontier watching his crew unload the latest shipment of rare minerals. The mining operation on Kepler Station had exceeded all projections for the 3rd month in a row. Human miners were pulling more materials from the asteroids than anyone had thought possible. The secret was not better equipment. Human mining tools were still considered primitive by galactic standards. The difference was how humans approached the work. Where alien crews followed detailed procedures and stopped when they encountered unexpected problems, human crews just figured out new ways to get the job done. Sophie Chen had modified the mining lasers to work at twice their rated capacity. The modifications violated about 50 safety regulations, but they had not lost a single piece of equipment to overheating. Human engineers understood that tools were meant to be pushed beyond their limits. Tony Williams walked up carrying a data pad. "Latest reports from the other mining operations are in. Every human crew is beating their quotas by at least 30%. "What are the aliens saying about that?" Jake asked. "Officially, they are pleased with human productivity. Unofficially, they think we are cutting corners and our luck will run out soon." Jake smiled. It was not luck. Human crews had learned to work together in ways that alien species could not understand. When a Keth Mori worker encountered a problem, they consulted their supervisors. When a Velthari worker found something unexpected, they reported it to their telepathic coordinators. When a Zephcon worker faced a challenge, they checked their databases for approved solutions. When human workers hit problems, they talked to each other. They shared ideas. They tried things that had never been tried before. Sometimes it failed spectacularly, but more often it led to better ways of doing things. Dr. Lisa Park emerged from her laboratory carrying several data crystals. Her team had been studying alien technology for months now. What they had found was both fascinating and disturbing. "I need to show you something," Lisa said. "We finished analyzing those Velthari sensor arrays from the decommissioned ships." They walked to her lab, which took up most of Deck 3. Lisa had requested permission to study discarded alien equipment. The Federation Council had agreed because they assumed humans could not understand advanced technology anyway. They were partially right. Humans could not understand why anyone would build technology so poorly. Lisa activated a holographic display, showing the internal structure of a Velthari sensor array. "Look at this design. It is incredibly sophisticated. The quantum resonance chambers can detect subspace fluctuations across 17 different dimensional frequencies." "That sounds impressive," Jake said. "It is impressive. Under perfect laboratory conditions, this sensor can detect a single photon from 3 star systems away." Tony frowned. "You said under perfect conditions." "Exactly. If the temperature varies by more than 0.01 degrees, the entire system shuts down. If there is any electromagnetic interference, it gives false readings. If the quantum chambers are not perfectly aligned, it cannot detect anything at all." Sophie looked at the display. "What happens when something hits the ship?" "The sensors go offline until they can be recalibrated, which takes about 6 hours if you have the right equipment and trained technicians." Jake stared at the hologram. "Human sensors are not nearly as sensitive, but they work when you get shot at. Human sensors are designed by people who expect to get shot at," Lisa said. "Look at this." She switched the display to show a human sensor array. It looked crude compared to the alien version. Thick cables instead of elegant crystalline connections. Simple electromagnetic detectors instead of quantum resonance chambers. Redundant systems everywhere. "Our sensors might not detect a photon from 3 systems away, but they will detect an enemy ship from far enough away to matter. And they keep working when someone is shooting at you." Tony nodded slowly. "Same with weapons. Kethmori energy beams can slice through solid rock, but only if the targeting computer has a perfect lock. Human projectile weapons just point and shoot." "The pattern is everywhere," Lisa continued. "Zefkin computers can process millions of calculations per second, but they crash if you ask them a question they were not programmed to answer. Human computers are slower, but they can handle unexpected problems." Jake walked around the lab looking at examples of alien technology that his team had been studying. Each piece was beautiful. Each one was incredibly advanced. Each one was designed to work perfectly under ideal conditions and fail completely when things went wrong. It reminded him of something his grandfather had told him about old Earth military equipment. The best rifle was not the one that was most accurate under perfect conditions. The best rifle was the one that still worked when it was covered in mud and you had not cleaned it in 3 weeks. An alarm chimed from the bridge. Jake and his team rushed to the command center, where the communications officer was trying to process an incoming signal. "Captain, we are receiving a distress call," Lieutenant Amy Carter reported. "It is very faint, and the signal is badly distorted. Can you clean it up?" "Working on it, sir." The signal cleared enough to make out words. The voice was definitely Velthari, and it sounded desperate. "This is the research vessel Eternity's Edge. We are trapped in the void sector. Life support failing. 200 crew members in emergency stasis. Request immediate assistance." Jake felt his blood run cold. The Eternity's Edge had been missing for 3 years. It had vanished while studying gravitational anomalies in the void sector. The Federation had declared the ship lost with all hands. Amy, are you sure about this signal? Yes, sir. It is definitely coming from the void sector. The timestamp indicates it was sent 18 hours ago. Tony looked grim. The void sector is off limits to all Federation ships. The gravitational fields there destroy most navigation systems, which is why the Federation never mounted a search and rescue mission, Lisa added. Their technology is too delicate to function in that environment. Jake stared at the star chart showing the location of the signal. The void sector was 3 days away at maximum speed. It was a region of space where strange gravitational effects played havoc with most advanced systems. Ships that entered it were often never seen again. But the Eternity's Edge was still there. 200 Velthari crew members were alive and waiting for rescue. The Federation Council would debate for weeks about whether to send a mission. They would run probability calculations and risk assessments. They would conclude that any rescue attempt was too dangerous. Sophie, how would our systems handle the gravitational effects in the void sector? Sophie thought for a moment. Our navigation computers might have trouble, but we can always fall back to manual piloting. Our engines are simple enough that gravitational interference should not shut them down. Life support is completely independent of the main computer systems. Tony, what about weapons and shields? Kinetic weapons do not care about gravitational fields. Explosive warheads work the same way everywhere. Our shields are not as sophisticated as alien energy barriers, but they are harder to disrupt. Lisa was already pulling up data about the void sector. The gravitational anomalies follow predictable patterns. If we time our approach correctly, we can avoid the worst effects. Jake made his decision. Set course for the void sector. Maximum speed. Sir, Amy said hesitantly, should we not report this to Federation Command first? By the time they finish discussing it, those crew members will be dead. We can rescue them now while their stasis pods are still functioning. The new frontier changed course and accelerated toward the void sector. Jake knew they were violating direct orders by entering forbidden space. He also knew that no other ship in the Federation fleet would attempt this rescue. The great species of the galaxy had built technology that was faster and more powerful than anything humans possessed. But they had also built technology that only worked under perfect conditions. The void sector was many things, but perfect was not one of them. Human ships were slower and their weapons were less impressive. But human technology was designed by people who understood that nothing ever went according to plan. It was built to keep working when everything else failed. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes primitive was exactly what you needed. 3 days later, the new frontier reached the edge of the void sector. Long-range sensors showed gravitational distortions that would tear apart most Federation ships. But human sensors also showed something else. Deep in the heart of the anomaly was a ship. The Eternity's Edge was still there, still sending its desperate signal, still waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to attempt a rescue. Jake looked at his crew. They were ready. Their ship was ready. Their primitive human technology was about to go where the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy feared to travel. 2 years had passed since humanity's return to the galaxy, and the transformation was complete. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station and watched massive terraforming ships work to heal the scarred surface of Earth below. The planet that had been turned into a Corvan military fortress was slowly becoming green and blue again, its atmosphere cleaned and its oceans restored to their original purity. The work would take decades to finish completely, but already, the first human settlements were being established in areas where the damage had been minimal. Children who had been born in the generation ships were finally walking on solid ground, breathing air that didn't come from recycling systems, and seeing a real sky for the first time in their lives. Jake had been promoted to planetary governor of the Sol system, responsible for overseeing Earth's restoration and the integration of the few alien populations that had chosen to remain under human rule. Most of the former Hegemony Alliance species had accepted relocation to distant star systems, preferring exile to continued conflict with humanity's overwhelming military superiority. Admiral Lisa Carter joined Jake at the viewport, her uniform now bearing the insignia of Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces. The human military had evolved from a fleet of exiled refugees into the dominant power in known space, responsible for maintaining peace among the dozens of species that inhabited the galaxy. "How are the rehabilitation projects progressing?" Carter asked. Jake consulted his datapad, which showed construction statistics from across the former human territories. "Better than expected. The new atmospheric processors are working at twice the projected efficiency rate. We should have breathable air across the entire planet within 5 years instead of 10. Carter nodded with satisfaction. Human technology had advanced far beyond what was needed for simple conquest. The same quantum systems that made their weapons unstoppable could also heal damaged worlds and restore dead ecosystems. Humanity had learned to create as well as destroy during their long exile. Through the viewport, they could see the construction frames for New Geneva itself. The space station was being built to serve as the capital of the reformed Galactic Assembly, a governing body that included representatives from every peaceful species in known space. Unlike the old Hegemony Alliance, this organization would be based on cooperation rather than conquest. Commander Beth Sullivan approached from the command center, her neural link allowing her to monitor human activities across multiple star systems simultaneously. The Ghost Division had evolved from a strike force into a peacekeeping organization, their Wraith fighters serving as invisible guardians that could respond to threats anywhere in the galaxy within hours. "Admiral, we're receiving the final surrender. Documents from the Zephyrian Empire," Beth reported. "That makes them the last former Alliance member to formally accept the new galactic order. All former human territories are now under our complete control." Carter accepted the datapad containing the surrender documents. The Zephyrians had been one of the more reasonable alien species, choosing negotiation over resistance when faced. With humanity's technological superiority, they would be allowed to maintain limited self-governance in their new territory beyond the galactic rim. Dr. Ryan Phillips materialized as a hologram, his physical body located aboard the research station that orbited Jupiter. Human technology now included matter transmission and holographic projection systems that made distance almost meaningless for communication and coordination. "The technology sharing program is ahead of schedule," Phillips reported. "We've successfully transferred basic medical and energy technologies to 17 peaceful species. The quantum agriculture systems are already increasing food production on former Alliance worlds by 300%. Jake smiled at that news. Humanity could have simply hoarded their advanced technology, but President Rodriguez had insisted on a different approach. Peaceful alien species were being gradually introduced to human innovations that would improve their quality of life while ensuring they remained dependent on human goodwill for continued access. The approach was working. Former enemies were becoming allies as they realized that human rule offered prosperity and security that the old alliance had never provided. Species that had lived under Corvan military oppression for centuries were discovering what it meant to have protectors rather than conquerors. President Elena Rodriguez appeared on the main communication screen, broadcasting from her office aboard the Defiance. The ship had become the mobile capital of human government, able to appear anywhere in the galaxy where her presence might be needed for diplomatic negotiations. Citizens of the galaxy, Rodriguez began her weekly address. Today marks the second anniversary of humanity's return from exile. 2 years ago, this galaxy was ruled by an alliance built on conquest and oppression. Today, it is governed by cooperation and mutual benefit. The broadcast was being transmitted to every inhabited world in human space and beyond. Alien populations that had once lived in fear of their hegemony alliance overlords now enjoyed unprecedented freedom and prosperity under human protection. The Human Republic has established trade agreements with 43 alien species, Rodriguez continued. Our technology-sharing programs have eliminated hunger on 16 worlds and provided clean energy to systems that had relied on polluting industrial methods for centuries. This is what civilization looks like when it's built on cooperation rather than domination. Jake turned away from the viewport to watch the broadcast on the station's main screen. Rodriguez had been the perfect choice for president during humanity's transition from exiled refugees to galactic rulers. She understood that lasting peace required former enemies to become willing partners rather than conquered subjects. The door to the observation deck opened and Dr. Kevin Shaw entered, carrying datapads filled with reports from the Galactic Monitoring Service. Shaw had established a galaxy-wide intelligence network that used both human technology and cooperative alien sources to identify potential threats before they could develop into serious problems. "Any security concerns?" Carter asked. Shaw shook his head. "The opposite, actually. The latest psychological profiles suggest that former Alliance species are adapting well to the new order. Birth rates are up, crime rates are down, and we're seeing increased cooperation between species that used to be rivals under Alliance rule." Carter wasn't surprised by the report. Fear had been the foundation of hegemony Alliance control, with member species kept in line by the threat of military retaliation. Human rule was based on demonstrated benefits rather than implied threats, making it much more stable in the long term. Beth Sullivan's neural link chimed with an incoming priority message. She closed her eyes for a moment to process the information directly through her consciousness before opening them again. "Admiral, we're detecting an unknown fleet approaching from outside the galaxy. Configuration suggests they're not from any known species." Carter felt a familiar tension in her chest. Humanity had reclaimed their stolen empire and established peace among known species, but the galaxy was a large place with many unexplored regions. There was always the possibility that new threats would emerge from the darkness between stars. "How long until they reach the outer sensor network?" Carter asked. 18 hours at current speed, Beth replied. "Should I alert the Ghost Division for possible deployment?" Carter considered the options. Human policy was to meet unknown contacts, with diplomacy first and force only if necessary. But they had learned the hard way that not all species could be trusted to respond reasonably to peaceful overtures. "Put the fleet on alert status, but don't deploy yet," Carter decided. "Send a diplomatic message to the unknown ships offering peaceful contact and safe passage if their intentions are peaceful. If they respond with hostility, we'll be ready." Jake watched the preparations begin as human ships throughout the system moved to defensive positions. The sight reminded him of something important about humanity's transformation from victims to guardians. They had not become the oppressors they had once fought against, but they had also not forgotten the lessons learned during 3 centuries of exile. President Rodriguez concluded her broadcast with words that had become the unofficial motto of the new galactic order. We remember what it was like to be powerless and afraid. We will ensure that no peaceful species ever has to experience that fear again. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to prosper together. As the unknown fleet continued its approach toward human space, Jake reflected on how much had changed since his reconnaissance mission to Centauri 2 years ago. Humanity had returned from the void not just as conquerors, but as protectors, using their technological superiority to build a better civilization than the one that had tried to destroy them. The aliens had thought humans were gone forever. They had learned that humanity not only survived but evolved beyond their worst nightmares. Now the galaxy enjoyed a peace and prosperity that would have been impossible under the old Alliance system. Through the viewport, Jake could see children playing in the parks of Earth's first restored city. They were human children who had never